So today, do a little bit of impromptu, and I would like to show you how to make a quick JavaScript animated time countdown bar. I was messing around with, I had a whole bunch of games back in the day when I used to program in Flash. That kind of dates me a little bit. That I wanted to convert to JavaScript, and I realized I wanted to add this feature to one of those games, and it could be used for a game, could be used for application. Yeah, hope you find this useful. So let's dive into the code right away. Here I am inside of this simple JS time bar project I've created. I have a simple index.html file, my CSS file, which isn't linked yet, as you can see over here. We'll link that up. And then I have an action.js file that we'll use to set up some of the timer code. So it's going to be a mix of vanilla JavaScript with some jQuery. I'll go and get those libraries as well. So that will be pretty much it. Let's start typing some code here. Let's start out by getting our style sheet hooked up. There we go. And also we'll get our ActionScript file in there. We haven't done anything with it yet. You will here soon. I'm going to run a defer on that. And action.js. Great, got those things plugged in. And the imagery for this, you're welcome to use it. I'm going to link to the version I have of this, the graphic for it that's on techudad.com. You're welcome to use it as much as you'd like. Use it for other projects if you'd like that. I'm fine with that too. If you want to use it for your game you're building, totally awesome. Go for it. So now that we've got our link in our JavaScript connected to this file, let's go ahead and build out some of the elements. So what's going to happen is you're going to be able to put in a certain number of seconds, or the user will be able to enter a number of seconds they want the timer to go, and then they hit start, a button that will start it, and then you'll watch the time bar tick down from right to left. So we'll need first, let's get an input in there. We'll say it's a type of text. For now, we'll put a place, well, let's not put a placeholder, let's put a value in there. Default value, we'll just say it's 15. And that will actually be 15 seconds, but we're going to use that value as part of our time. So there's that guy. I'm also going to add a little class to this guy in case we need to. So we'll call it input bar, or input time maybe. That'd probably be a better name. And then we're going to have our button. We're going to go a little bit Wild West rugged on some of these elements just to get them in place. You're welcome to go back and clean some stuff up. Also, this will include a little bit of spaghetti code. I always feel like you have to learn a little bit of spaghetti code first so you understand how JavaScript works before you can improve upon that code. So yes, we'll do a little bit of that as well. And you can definitely refine this, clean it up, speed it up, all of the above. But yeah, this is just kind of get your feet wet with this concept. So we have our input text and our start. Let's save that. And let's just go make sure that when we run it, yeah, we have our time and our button. Pretty simple, just HTML sitting there. Okay, now comes the fun part. Let's get the element that's going to hold the time bar. So I'm going to say this is my time bar, and inside of there, there's going to be a slider. Okay, so the time bar is going to hold the graphic that's the background. It's a cool little image that I'll show you here in a second. And then the slider will be the part that grows and shrinks based on the JavaScript doing its thinking. Yeah, so we'll just build out those two pieces, and we'll have to do a little bit of adjustment here to get those lined up with that graphic. And you don't even have to use the graphic. You could just use a box inside of a box. The main thing is understanding how big you're going to have that element. And in fact, you need one element to stay 100% of the original width, right? And then one that changes with the JavaScript. And in fact, for our background image, technically we need to make a bunch of typos now. We're going to do, sorry, I'm making all sorts of typos here. We'll put a container around it. That's actually for our background image, because these two are to control the width of the actual time bar being 100% here, and then the one that moves. Okay, so that's pretty much our basic HTML setup. Let's go ahead and start plugging in a few of our CSS elements, and we'll see some stuff start to show up. So I'm going to go with 100%. Height, auto. We're just laying down some groundwork, just get our baseline set up for our website. I usually do this with all the websites I mess around with. Okay, we're not going to really see much just yet. And now let's go set up our container, because that's going to have our element in it. I'm just going to set a background color just to make sure. I always do this up front. Just throw a random hex color inside of there, just to see. Let me get that out of the window. Things that start to show up, we need to be able to put a width and a height on this. We'll just do 100 pixels just to get it to show up. It's going to be a square at first. We'll eventually need to make it rectangular shape. There it is. Okay, so in case you're wondering, I'm using VS Code Go Live, which is why it's auto-updating after I save. I don't have to refresh the browser. So our container's working. Instead of having this background color, we'll use a background image. Get our image with our URL, and it's actually going to be at http www.techudad.com/images/time, and spell the word time, timebar.png. And I'm going to bring this bar over. Don't love how the separator works in VS Code just because of the percentage widths. And there's a piece of it. Obviously it's not correct because I've got this width sitting on it. We'll just set that out for like 250 eventually. Yeah, I'm just totally guessing at the width of that. I shouldn't memorize the width of the images I create, you would think, but here I am and I have not. So I'll try 400. No, not 40. That was unwise. By the way, I really like the Coding Train videos, because he makes mistakes in his videos and he shows you it's okay to make mistakes, and I want you to know that it's okay to make mistakes. We want background repeat, no repeat, so that we don't get a duplicate of it. Just keep going if we're too wide. Okay, and there's our little container. So inside of our container is just this background image. There's nothing really complex going on here. Our time bar will actually go inside of this little box right here. So both the time bar, which will stay 100% of this drawn image of this section, and then the slider will be the one that moves with the timer. Okay, so there's our base setup. Let's make sure that we get our time bar and our slider in the right place first. That would be, well, even if we just got them in general vicinity, and you can go back and tweak that, we'll probably start there. So time bar, let's do width. Let's go 80%. That will probably be off, and I'm just going to guess 25 pixels for the height. And then we're also going to do, I got to restrain myself from doing nested things because I didn't do Sass with this, because I was trying to keep this video a little bit more simple. Slider, and it can be width 100%, height 100%, and now I'm pushing all sorts of fun buttons. This is what I get for making videos late at night. You can tell the gray color that I use all the time. Okay, so there's our little slider inside. Obviously it's the wrong size, and eventually we'll get it to fit down inside of here. But the point is that we can see that it's there and it'll lay over the top of this guy. So that's what we want. Eventually we can use some like position absolute. In fact, we can go there now if we really want to. Position absolute. We go top. You know, this would be guessing, obviously. That's probably not going to be anywhere close to where I want it. And of course, now that I've done that, I need to make sure that the container is relative. Anytime you use position absolute, it needs to be relative to its parent. So we'll start just adjusting it. But that's good enough. We'll make some more tweaks as we go. Now let's get into the fun stuff, which is the JavaScript part. Let's make this thing dive down. So the functionality be, I'm going to hit start on this, and it will take it 15 seconds for this to go to empty out this bar inside of our container there. So this is where it really gets good. We're going to go ahead and just moving some windows around here. Let's go ahead and get our JavaScript. So if you don't already have a JavaScript file created, here's mine. I've just got it nestled over here by my CSS file. Hope that's okay. Hope you can see that okay. Let me know, and love to know your feedback as we're going and making these videos. If you prefer a different format for these videos, or if I go too fast, love to hear your feedback in the comments. So we need to build out a couple of variables in our JavaScript. So we'll go with let. We need a couple here. One is going to be round length. It starts out at 0, and then it gets put in by the default size of our time input. We'll have a timer object. This is the one that we're creating it globally and not assigning it as of yet. It'll get assigned when it runs. That's pretty common for your bare bones spaghetti JavaScript. Current size 100. That's because we're going to start the bar at a percentage of 100%. And then we will add the time start total. And that's just going to be declared but not assigned yet. Okay, so there's just the variables we'll start with. And then we're going to do a couple of functions. One that will react to our button. This will call our button over here. Let's get that one in there. Let's create a function called start round. And we will do, we're also going to use jQuery in this, and I'll need to go get those libraries. So it's kind of nice in many ways to, out on the interface, have the countdown show up here too, so you know what's going on. That's not a bad move. Let's go get our jQuery right now. I use the jQuery, I'm lazy. I go to the jQuery UI site, hit view source, and I copied these two guys out of here as my source and paste those into my project. So just jQuery UI view source. If you need to pause the video and see and type these down, that's fine, but it'd be much faster. Just go and get them. You can go and obviously go get those from other sources. Be sure to put those above your JavaScript code, because you're going to be calling jQuery calls inside your JavaScript, and if we don't put it above it, we're going to have some fun with errors like $undefined. Okay. So now that we went and got jQuery, this next line in our JavaScript will make more sense. We're going to set up a variable. We'll call it let the time equal a number, and that number is, and this is what we're getting back from that input, and that input being our input time. So number in here, and this is basic jQuery format. We're just going to call the input time class and val. Let's give ourselves some room. We already know what the class name is. Let's make sure we've got all the room we need to read that. And then we're going to set the timer. And we have not yet set this function up. Oops. So that's what you get for fat fingering things. At the time. We'll send the time into there. So we're getting this value out of this input, converting it, or I should say casting it as a number, and then sending it into our set timer function, which is what we're going to define next. So say function set should make it correct. And the amounts coming through there. Okay, so our round length is going to equal the amount. One is going to stay constant. It's going to say that's what it's set at the amount coming through. The next one is going to move. So we have round length and the time start total that we've defined on the top is also going to equal amount. But why use two? Well, one's going to move and one's not. And this is part where I kind of got into a little bit of spaghetti code, but again, just for simplicity's sake. And then we're going to create our timer object, which is that guy right there. We've declared it globally, and now we're just creating a set interval that will call a method called tick. Let's call it tick down. And it goes off every second because our user is setting up seconds. Okay, and there's our set timer method. One more function and we're just about ready to roll. We have a couple things to plug in over here. Now we need to create the function that gets called every second. What is it going to do? It's going to show that time's ticking down and the slider is going to move down. Okay, so we will create our function. It's called tick down. And round length is going to diminish every time it runs. Current size. Now this is the part so that we can flatten it out where it gets an equal increment every time the second ticks down compared to the percentage of the width of the box. So we'll do a little bit of math here. Nothing too complex. I'm not super mathy, and it's okay if you're not either. So we're going to divide the round length by the time start total. And then after that, we are going to times it by 100 so that we get the number that we can convert to the CSS. We're going to toss this into our jQuery so that it will resize our slider as the seconds tick down. So a couple things. Let's go create our call to our slider, I guess is what I called it. And we're going to be updating the width. So we'll make our jQuery call to say we're calling the width. And then inside of here, we're going to do current size. And this is, and I could obviously go back and do string literals. So feel free to go back and clean that up. If round length, and this is for us, we need it to stop when it hits 0, or it'll go into negative numbers, although the div can't go into negative width, so that just really won't do anything. But this is just for good measure. We're telling it to clear the interval, and we're clearing the global timer object we've created. So there's the bigger pieces. Now keep in mind we haven't connected all the dots here. Obviously we need to go connect up our button that doesn't call start round, so let's do that first as we're thinking through this. I'll go through and create our event. Our on-click event's going to call start round. Okay. So if we were to click our button, start round gets called. Start round is over here. When start round runs, it's setting a local variable called the time, getting the value from that input, casting it as a number, and sending it through to our timer function. And then we're setting up a couple of our global variables for the one that's going to stay that amount and the one that's going to tick down with all the seconds. And then we're starting the timer. And I like to just go through this mentally because this helps me make sure I didn't miss anything. And then round length obviously goes down every second. We're adjusting the size of the slider by this number and inserting it as the percentage width of that object. So right here on our slider where we say width 100%, that's actually what we're updating every time it's going to tick down. Okay, so in general, we're going to have some pieces in place. Another good thing to add would be updating just to see that our numbers are ticking. If we don't see the actual object moving, if we don't see our box moving here, it's also good to kind of see on our interface, even just temporarily, if the number's ticking down, so we know at least have that part right. I like to do that. If you want to skip that part, that's up to you. So at the end of this guy right here, I'm actually going to put another div with a class, call it ticker, and inside of ticker we'll see, well, we're going to put a 0 just so we can see where that shows up. So it's right there up against the edge. Definitely could use some CSS love to clean this up, but we'll see this tick down the number every second just so that we know something's moving, and we should be seeing this bar moving down with it. Okay, now that we've done that, to update that every time, we now also need to make a call to that ticker div inside our JavaScript. And to do that, all we're going to do is update the ticker's HTML. Well, technically it's its inner HTML. According to jQuery, we just call HTML, and we'll insert our round length. So what we should see is a number counting down, and then when it hits 0, that stops. And that's another good sign that we know that our timer's working as expected. Okay, so we have our general pieces in place. Fingers crossed, we're ready to light the rocket, so to speak. I think we've connected many of our dots. And we're going to hit start. There's 14, 13, 12, 11, and we're watching our bar tick down. And what we want to see happen is it's going to be completely gone by the time it hits 0. Perfect. That's exactly what we wanted. And I'm sure that if we were to change this number, we could change it to 25. We'd then see this number update to 25. And see it continue to tick down. And notice that it goes in slightly smaller increments, again, because the number's larger, it's going to go down slowly and our timer adjusts. So this is exactly what we wanted to do. Now what we want is we want to get that placement right, and it'd be nice to have a better color on that thing. That thing is ugly. Gray is such an awful color. We could just slap in one of VS Code's colors. I'm going to back this up and just we'll go get a background color. That's what I get there. Trying to get its auto prompt in there so I can just pull a bunch of them up. There we go. That's what we wanted. You can do purplish or blue violet as it's called. Okay, so there's an adjusted color, just a little bit of cleanup. Okay. And then we'll want to go back and tweak that just a pinch. So we'll go top is now 30. In fact, a faster way, let's talk about a better way to adjust that is if I come in here to slider and I open up the inspection tool. A faster way to address that is to come in here and edit it right here. So on time bar, don't move the slider. The slider's what's going to change within the time bar. We're moving the time bar, and I'm just going to sit there and play with those numbers until it looks right. And as you can see, my width is off, but no matter what I change its CSS width to, it still work because it's just to 100% of whatever it is. So that is why we built it the way we did. So let's go ahead and get 80 down. We want that to fit within, and that again is why we put the slider inside of time bar, is so that no matter what, we could line that up with our timing, and no matter what the size of our actual bar, our JavaScript will always work. It's dynamic code, so to speak, in a very limited sort of approach. So now that I've updated that, I'm just going to copy and paste that code into there, and I can see that it fits beautifully within my bar. And now let's set it to 10 seconds. We'll hit start. Watch it tick, and now we watch the bar tick down, beautifully matching up with our timer object, and voila, we created a simple JavaScript time bar. Animates, ticks down to whatever length the user inputs or whatever length you want to input. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I'd love to hear your feedback. Be sure to tell your friends, subscribe. I'm going to keep the videos coming, and we'll see you next time.